Hi, everyone. I want to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 workshop of March 21st, 2022. Would everyone please stand, and together we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce our participants for this afternoon. Starting at my far right is Ms. Lynn Town, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Sean Hucker, Superintendent. To my immediate left, Mr. Casey Morrisroe, Vice Chair, Ms. Leslie Bierke, Board Member, Ms. Heather Tenbrink, Board Member, Ms. Allie Anderton, Board Member, and I'm Rebecca Smith, Board Chair. No public comment will be accepted during this meeting, and comments may always be submitted to the board using trustees@cdaschools.org or through our clerk at any time. Issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff member for follow-up. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, agenda is approved. We have two high school student body reports for information tonight. First up is Lake City High School.
Good evening, esteemed board chair, honorable trustees, Superintendent Hawker, and district administration. My name is Caden Stone. I'm the ASB president here at Lake City High School. Here with me tonight is ASB Vice President Amber Idaho. It's been a busy, jam-packed, and fun last month here at LCHS, and we want to share with you some of the things that have been going on tonight.
First off, we'd like to congratulate Lake City sophomores Nathan Edmonds, Marcus Davis, George Lanigan, and Parker Moorville for being selected to take part in the NASA Techrise Student Challenge. They received a $1,500 grant and material kit from NASA for their high-altitude balloon that will collect atmospheric samples when it is launched by NASA in early 2023. We are very excited for these Timberwolves and cannot wait to see their bright futures ahead of them.
This past month, our student council was also fortunate enough to attend the Idaho Association of Student Councils State Conference in Boise. This conference was a great opportunity to workshop ideas and have informative breakout sessions, show school spirit, and of course, grow as leaders. We are very thankful for this experience and can't wait to implement some of the ideas we learned at our school.
Within our student council, we have been very hard at work. Our seniors are currently planning what's promising to be a beautiful prom on May 6th, and our juniors are planning a fire station drive to collect food and supplies for our local fire stations. Our sophomores are coordinating a March Madness 3-on-3 basketball tournament for our students, and our freshmen are planning a community engagement project with our elderly community. Needless to say, it's going to be a fun last few months of our school year. In activities news, our Lake City debate team is headed to state on Thursday and will be competing this weekend in Boise. District speech also wrapped up on March 5th, this last Saturday, where many T-Wolves qualified for state in April.
Our wrestling team also qualified for state with our very own Zach McDonald winning state in the 106-pound division. Way to go, Zach. We'd also like to give a huge shout out to our boys and girls varsity basketball teams. For the first time in over a decade, both of our teams won the district championship in the same year. We are very proud of all of our student athletes who represented our school and school districts so well at districts and at state. Also, a huge shout out to our student section who made the long trips down to Boise to support our teams one last time. Way to go, everyone. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to come speak with you tonight, and we'll see you again next month. Go T-Wolves.
Thank you, Lake City. Up next is K-Tech.
My name is Isaac, and I'm in auto body collision and repair.
My name is Riley. I'm in auto body and collision repair.
My favorite part right now is the painting. I really do enjoy painting and just making all the cool designs and effects in it and different type of shades, colors.
My most favorite parts I've done in the program have been repairing plastic bumpers and doing custom designs for fenders and painting. The past projects I've been involved in is I've done a bit of some welding, some metal welding, and plastic welding. I've been doing some painting and doing some reassembly and deassembling parts on cars.
The past project I've been involved in is a fender design I've done. So I've done dent repair, paint, and another project I've been in is Skills USA. I've enjoyed that. It's really competitive, a lot of fun, and it really brings it all out in you, so you make sure you win. Skills USA is a competition between multiple school districts around here. So we compete in an auto body and then a paint side. So we do, on the auto body side, we do like dent repairs, body filler, and then on the paint, we do paint, clear coat, and whoever practically comes out on top is going to go to state competitions, and then there they can go from there and just win a bunch of cool prizes.
So I'm excited to do more painting and also doing some outside projects like a go-kart that came in and it's looking for custom designs and working on that. I don't really have a set on plan after I graduate, but I most likely took this program is because I'm an artist and I was looking forward to the auto body side more of the collision side, but the collision side is really fun to learn and learn new skills, but the auto body side is to try new art skills and new media.
After high school, I'm hoping to take the North Idaho College course, which is practically the same thing I'm doing right now, just way more in depth and more into the program, so I'll learn a lot more and also get a certificate. And then after that, I'm hoping to get into some type of body shop and work my way up from there.
Thank you for supporting K-Tech.
Great, thank you, K-Tech. We have a consent agenda tonight with 3 items on it, 2 for technology and 1 for a student SAT exemption. Do you have a motion tonight to approve the consent agenda?
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda or any questions? Hearing none, then all in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda passes then. And then we have 2 information items that bring us to our workshop this evening. And the first will be IBB and negotiations. And Jeff Fuller, it looks like you are leading us off, or unless Dr. Hucker or Jeff.
Well, I will just say, yeah, we have 2 items, and we know that this is kind of an awkward setup here. It's really just meant for the TV viewers, and we'll work on that for next time. So it is a workshop and a work session. We're really wanting a lot of dialogue and questions back and forth. So again, apologize as this seems pretty formal. We'll work on that for next time. So with that, we really the primary meat of tonight's meeting is some information and updates in regards to the IBB negotiation process. Looks like we've got a great team to present tonight. We're planning about 45 minutes to an hour tops for this kind of conversation, and then we'll wrap up with really probably 20, no more than 30-minute conversation on regards to the next stop. And we really do have a hard stop where we're trying to meet by about 5:30. That's our schedule for tonight.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, members of the board. This is your IBB negotiations training, and maybe I should also say it's a time for us to just unpack these acronyms so you understand what all these acronyms are that we throw at you every day, at least in some of the world that I work in. So with me today, I have Scott Travers. Scott is a teacher at Woodland Middle School, also a CEA representative. Toby Sanford, also a teacher at Woodland Middle School and part of the CEA, Coeur d'Alene Education Association team. Myself, Jeff Voller, is the Director of Operations. And then on Zoom, we have Kathy Yamamoto. She is with the Coeur d'Alene, or the Idaho Education Association. She has been one of our trainers. So I will invite a couple of these other participants to speak. There's Kathy. She's on the Zoom waving at you guys right now. And I'll invite her to speak briefly about the training here in just a minute as we move through this. So in introduction, as we move into negotiations, there's a couple points that I want you guys to understand, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the history of negotiations and a couple different ways that we've negotiated in the past and why we've landed on what we call the IBB, or interest-based bargaining type of training that we do. And so, let's see. Okay. So as we enter into the negotiations, it's important to understand that there is a board team, and that's consisted of 5 or 6 members. And then there's what we consider the Coeur d'Alene Education Association team. And so while there's 2 teams, part of this is really for us to come together, and we do represent some different interests or some different perspectives, but we come together to really try to work through problem solving. So I think it's important to understand that. A couple other things that are really important to understand is a lot of what we're looking at is the contract terms and salaries and benefits. And a lot of the contract terms are stipulated in the master articles. You've probably heard about those. They're posted on the website under HR. And so if you haven't had a chance, please review those and look at those. But those are really the guiding principles of what the certified staff go under. And so it's important to understand that we have certified staff and we have classified staff in the district. And so really when we go into negotiations, we're negotiating for the certified staff. Generally speaking, the agreement that we come to for certified staff, we apply that same agreement or a similar agreement to the classified staff. So if we're going to give a pay increase, almost always it will be a similar pay increase. We have made a few adjustments to that throughout the years, but more often than not, what we're negotiating for with the classified staff, we really give a very strong consideration to the certified staff for similar agreements and how we would apply their pay, salaries, and benefits and such as well to them. And then as we get through it, we are looking at either making specific changes to the master articles, an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, which might be a 1-year trial for something that we've agreed to as we're discussing a problem or a solution. Or it may be saying we might pay bonuses and what that might look like rather than, making an adjustment to a pay scale. And Casey, you look like you might have a question, or you okay, I just want to make sure. So yeah, and at any point, if you do have questions, please, this is a workshop, so please stop. I'm going to ask Scott Travers to come up, and he's going to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past and what we're doing with interest-based bargaining right now and kind of why we've landed there.
Perfect. I don't want to have to push any buttons. Hi there, I'm Scott Travers, 7th grade social studies at Woodland. I've taught there for, I don't know how long it's been open, 24 years, and then at Canfield before that. Middle school for 26 years is why my hairline is, I think, the way it is. Rebecca and I were talking earlier. She has 2 children that are 7th graders, and really I feel like it's the perfect age. They're old enough that you can kind of mess with them and they like it. And they're young enough that they like to come to school. So anyway, 7th grade social studies, that's me. Yeah. I'm also the lead negotiator for the CEA and proud grandfather of 2 granddaughters, which is, I highly recommend that, by the way. That's pretty good stuff. Anyway, so, and Casey, you probably at least remember when we used to do positional-based bargaining. And essentially, in negotiations, the state of Idaho requires us to negotiate every year. We can't sign a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal or whatever, and I understand that because let's say we get a 3-year deal and then something happens with the economy, and so I understand we have to do it every year. We would prefer, I think, to not have to do it every year, but it really doesn't matter, so we do this every year. It used to be, and this is how it was, there would be a row of desks here, and then an opposing row of desks, like an offensive and defensive line in football, right? This is exactly what it was, and we'd stare at each other, and we would come with proposals as to what we wanted. We would say, we want this, or the district would say, we want this, and then we would argue back and forth about it, and sometimes there were fingers being pointed, sometimes there were faces that would get red. I heard some naughty words before. So at one point, we sat down and said, you know what, this is not all that effective because we just get mad at each other. And realistically, you're going to work better with somebody who you get along with than you don't. And we started this IBB, interest-based bargaining, which basically just caused us to listen to each other. because we didn't want to listen. And I'm not going to say that I agree with everything Jeff says, but at least I know he's a nice guy, right? And so we have differences of opinion, and we started listening to each other and maybe understanding where the other person or where the other group was coming from, and it's been very, very helpful. I think like anything, there are downsides to interest-based bargaining. We look at it positively as we're a team, and instead of making demands on what we want, we try to come up with common goals that will be agreeable to everybody, but it tends to take longer. We've been in CAPS, which stands for Collaboration and Problem Solving Sessions, since, well, October, I think, is when we do that. We do that once a month. And, you know, and we then meet before CAPS and after CAPS and during CAPS, and we try to solve problems. And I feel like we've had 3 issues that we've addressed this year, and maybe we've solved one of them, perhaps. And we're still looking at a couple of things, and one of them I think might be a little sticky in negotiations this year, because we have to work on coming together a little bit. So when we get into negotiations this year, I feel like some of the time is going to be spent problem solving. Some of the time is going to be spent with the group. Instead of arguing over proposals, we're going to be trying to come up with creative solutions. And sometimes it's kind of clunky, but I truly believe this. If the CEA side and the district side and the board, if we all get together and we're one team and we start throwing out ideas, every once in a while we come up with creative solutions to things. And so I feel like that is a real strength of the IBB process, of the CAPS process. And I'm not gonna pretend that it's always smooth sailing, because sometimes we get a little owly still. I mean, it does happen. I remember last year there was a little fireworks case. Casey, I'm sure you remember that still. But it's the nice thing is, when you start to learn to look at things from someone else's perspective, even if you don't agree with it necessarily, understanding is pretty powerful, I think. And so I just feel like it helps us come with creative solutions to things. But like I said, it does tend to take a little bit longer. So we're no longer doing the positional-based bargaining. We've switched to the interest-based. We started this in 2018, so we've done it for a few years. And I would have to say, overall, it's been beneficial to all parties involved. So I don't know, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Jeff? Or, no? Okay, good.
I would just say, if I can chime in, that for me, one of the biggest differences is, you know, ultimately, before in positional, we would talk about lots of ideas, but when it came down to money, and we always talk about money last, because that's the biggest ticket item, is we kind of threw out everything we did the first 10 sessions, because all we were just splitting up money. And what this has allowed us to do is address some things that have been lingering issues for years and years and years, like elementary prep time, I think is one that we solved through this process. That we probably would have never gotten to if we were still in positional bargaining. So it's kind of those non-monetary, more work situation type stuff. And we tend to, it's gotten better, I think, but once we do get to the money, we tend to get a little positional.
Yeah, I think both of those are really good summaries, what Mr. Morrisroe said and what Scott presented on that. And so just to back up a little bit, we've mentioned CAPS, so that's our collaboration and problem-solving sessions. That's what we work on once a month. The teams come together and we jointly identify those areas of concern that we want to spend some time talking through. Like, how can we solve some of these problems that we know are frustrating staff, or just challenges that we see based on some of the things that are outlined in the contracts. And so, you know, this year we're working on dual credit. So we get a bucket of money from the colleges for those dual credit teachers, and we're trying to figure out how are we going to allocate that money so it benefits students, honors the teachers for the work that they do. And so that's part of what we've been talking about with that. Before and after school duty, there's been some challenges, especially with COVID related, of some additional duties that have been asked of teachers with covering students, especially before school. Also, after school, some of that leads to, like in my department, is transportation. If we can't get buses there on time, or we're running a route that's going way out of town, we don't have enough time to get back into the middle school kids. Sometimes teachers are having to stay a little bit later, and that goes after their contract time. So how do we find a balance and work through those situations? I mean, those are examples of some of the things that we're working through in CAPS. Another one was the advanced professional endorsement. We did agree on that last year in negotiations, but there was some language that we really needed to understand and make some clarify what does a distinguished teacher look like, and how do you really obtain that, and what does that look like, because people have varying opinions on what that looks like. And so we spent some time working through that this year as well. And then we also bring forth any other challenges, and then we prioritize those. So those top 3 were ones that we established last year in negotiations that we were going to work through in CAPS. And then we still have a few on our list that we may or may not, probably likely at this point, not get to this year, but those will be brought forward to continue to work on as we move forward with that. And so during that time in CAPS, we use a process really similar to the interest-based bargaining, where we really try to respect and honor the perspective of where each team is coming from as we work through these problems. One of the things that helps ground us is what we call our ground rules. And these 10 ground rules that you see on the screen are ground rules that our team have come up with. When we went to the IBB process, we spent some time talking about what are the ground rules that we want to establish for us. So we focus on the problem, not the person. Listen with care and respect. Be open. Do not rush to judgment. Review the minutes prior to a session, and that's for negotiations. Use a printed agenda. Start the meeting on time and end on time, respecting each other's time. One person speaks at a time. This one can be a little bit of a challenge for us, but we've actually done a really nice job of our facilitators stepping in to, look at who's raising a hand to talk, taking notes, and saying, okay, I need you to wait because you're trying to talk over somebody, but I acknowledge that it's your turn to speak here in just a minute, and kind of talk through so that each person has the ability to share their thoughts and work through that. We ask that they avoid side conversations, and then when we get to building a consensus, we'll use a thumbs up method. So thumbs up, I support that idea, I still have some questions, or I can't get behind that idea at this point. And so, we're trying to come to consensus, and so that's how we built through this. And then decisions will be made by unanimous consensus. Like I said, we're really trying to get to that point. So those are the ground rules that we follow. We have a set of values that is trying to guide every agreement that we come to. Is it legal? Does it meet our board policy? Is it affordable? Is it sellable to the constituents? Is it feasible and workable solution? And is it respectable to stakeholders? And again, these are values that our team has come up with through our training. And I'm going to bring Kathy Yamamoto on here in just a minute and have her talk a little bit about the training that we've done. So I'll bring her up here in just a second. But helping you understand the interest-based bargaining, and this probably is a really hard, well, you can't see that slide at all on your screens, but it is in your board packet. And this actually is just a slide that I think gives a lot of detail on the stages that we go through as we go through the IBB process. This was captured from one of our training sessions. And I think I may just leave it at that, but know that there's some detail in there of the steps and stages that we go through. And I think some of these will be a little more outlined in detail as we go through in here. So an interest-based strategy assumes that the parties are in a relationship with each other and want to continue in such a relationship. So while Scott said he doesn't always agree with me and I don't always agree with him, we do genuinely like each other. And, at the end of the day, I think we can, talk about football or, something that we have in common and, generally enjoy each other. And that goes the same for everybody that is on the teams. It requires joint training and a commitment to IBB. And I think I'm going to pause right there and ask Kathy Yamamoto to come on. She's on Zoom with us, so she's down in Boise. And just ask her to share a little bit about the training that she's done with our groups over the years. We brought her back this year in November because we had a lot of new members on both sides of the teams, really. And so I'm just going to ask her to give a brief overview of some of the training that she's done and the work that she had a partner, Blaz, who would come up with us as well. And Blaz has since retired and is living in Arizona and enjoying the sunny lifestyle. But Kathy's still been a part of our training, so I'm going to ask her to share a little bit about that.
Well, welcome, Coeur d'Alene School Board, and it's good to see Jeff and Scott again. As Jeff indicated, my name is Kathy Yamamoto. I'm employed by the Idaho Education Association. I don't know why I'm seeing two images here, but anyway, I'm assigned to Boise, and we have been doing interest-based bargaining since 1995, so I'm dating myself a little bit. And as Mr. Voller said, this is a commitment to valuing the relationship and joint creative problem solving. So it all started with a meeting that we had with Dr. Stan Olson on December the 8th of 2017. He was an interim superintendent there and thought maybe he would like to have Blas Teleria and myself come up and do a joint training. Blas is currently the Human Resources Director in the Boise School District, and as Jeff said, he's now retired, so he's not my wingman or co-partner in doing this kind of training and facilitating. So after that initial meeting where Dr. Olson kind of painted a picture of what possibilities could happen in Coeur d'Alene, we were sort of excited by it. And there was a joint training that was put on in October of 2018. We came back on January 24th of 2018. And then I have, let's see, May 22nd of 2019 for a refresher because people change. I remember Casey specifically was in that training. And then November 18th of 2021. And so I think the important aspect of this is the joint training piece with both the board and the association teams. And it's not a one and done. I mean, periodically you do need to have kind of a refresher training to sort of get back to basics. What is it that we really value? What are our goals as both a school district and an association? But when the two sides are in sync and they truly listen to each other and try to do joint problem solving, I think everybody benefits, including the students and the community. Nobody likes labor disharmony. And so when both sides commit to this process, it does make things go a lot smoother. And as they have themselves said, you don't always agree, but there's a lot of transparency on both sides about why something is important, what the needs are, and how can we brainstorm some creative options to meet the needs, not only of one side, but of both sides. And so by paying a lot of attention to the mutual needs of the parties, generally the options that come out are going to be workable, and the process itself, when it's used, kind of takes care of those aspects. But I guess I'm here to really advocate for the aspect of the joint training and the refresher pieces of it to kind of get us back together. In Boise, we do a retreat every year, usually in October, just because people come and go and the teams change over time. And it's always good to press the reset button, kind of assess how did things go last year, what went well, what would we perhaps like to revisit or change a little bit to help our performance improve from year to year. So that's kind of it. Happy to stand for questions.
One of the things that's been really fun about the trainings that Kathy and Blas have brought is they usually do some personality trainings with us so that we can understand that, you know, we all have strengths and weaknesses in our personalities and how do we work together in those personalities. And that's kind of been fun exercises that they've brought us through, and we've appreciated those. So thank you, Kathy, for your participation with us and supporting us in the training that we do. One of the things that we do in that training, as Kathy mentioned, is talk a little bit about facilitator training. And the way we use the facilitator in this is we use a couple facilitators, one from each team, and they develop the agenda. They're going to take the notes, they're going to guide the conversation, and they're going to manage the speakers. And I'm going to ask Toby to come up briefly and just kind of talk about that. She's new to the process for us, and I just would like her to talk about what she's gotten out of that training. She facilitated her first meeting. The last one was your first meeting you facilitated, right? So, you know, she's starting to understand the process and, you know, take some leadership with that. And so I'm just going to ask her to speak briefly about what that's like with the training that she's gone through and coming in as a new member and being able to facilitate for us.
Hi, I'm Toby Sanford, and I teach 6th grade math at Woodland. This is my 7th year there. 6 years previously, I taught 7th grade math. So Scott missed me so much that he twisted my arm and asked me to help when somebody couldn't help last summer. So needless to say, I'm still doing it almost a year later. But so I actually like facilitating because I like to kind of sit back and watch and also just be able to observe both sides and listen to what they have to say about all of the solutions that they're coming up with, the different discussions that we're having I'm going to make this pretty short and sweet. But one thing I would say about all of this entire process is I like that both sides get to present solutions and discuss those solutions. And really, like, we throw everything out there. It doesn't have to be, you know, it's not just looking at the financial side or not the financial side. Like, it looks at every single angle, and then we discuss it and narrow down to the best solutions that would work for each side together. Does that make sense? So, thank you.
And then the last bullet that I have on this slide that I wanted to touch on is the term caucus that you'll hear. And, you know, a caucus is basically either team just saying we want to go in a caucus where we just break as our individual teams. We can call it at any time, and we've used it for several different reasons. One, we might just want to go talk about some different options that are before us. We've used it just to take a break. A couple times we've gotten a little bit heated, and we kind of recognize that, you know, we're maybe not making progress because we might be getting to a point where there might be some personal attacks ready to come, and we'll just call a caucus and just take a breath and step back and say, okay, what do we need to do to kind of move these conversations forward and regroup? And that's been really helpful for us. Or if we're getting into proposals and we're getting close to maybe an agreement, we might just make a few tweaks to some language in a proposal and bring it back as a written counter proposal kind of type thing. So that's what we use the term, the tool caucus, and you'll hear that word thrown out as we go into negotiations. This is probably reiterating a little bit of what we've just kind of talked about, but again, it's just kind of some real key strategies. We're seeking creative solutions. We're focusing on the areas of agreement. We're being trustworthy. We're reconciling the interests between the groups. We're looking to seize opportunities, and again, we value the relationship. And again, some of these are just some different slides that I pulled from our trainings, but, you know, again, valuing the relationships, focusing on the issues, not the personalities, respecting the process, seek solutions to try to mutually agree and separate the interests. And then we have what we call a BATNA, knowing your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And that's something that if we just haven't come to an agreement, what are some things that we could do? And that might be agreeing to just kind of step away from a while, and maybe we might need to come back for that at another time. Maybe that's something we move to CAPS for the next year and keep working on if we're a ways away. So the steps and the processes in IBB. So we spend time, we tell the story so that we can understand what is the challenge that's before us. We have to identify the problem. We have to understand it and put together a problem statement. We collectively identify the interests. What are the interests on both sides that people are bringing up for this, and what are the challenges? We'll collectively brainstorm options. We'll evaluate those options against the interests and the standards that we presented. And then we look to find a solution that we can draw consensus for. We use what we call a straw design approach, where we'll just kind of start to draft an agreement and say, okay, well, what does this look like? Here's a first step of what we may be able to, this might look like. And then we can take that straw design and work it around and, you know, try to modify it to something that really both teams can come to agreement with. And we work to ensure the implementation and communicate the results. So by communicating the results, Scott will send an update to the CEA. Scott Mabin will often send an update out to all staff so that everybody knows, because you also have to understand that not every teacher is a member of the Coeur d'Alene Education Association. So while Scott's communicating with the CEA, we also want other teachers to know that, you know, what is being discussed in there as well. Different results that we can come to. We might send a tentative agreement, a memorandum of understanding. That's usually like a 1-year trial to see, you know, is this going to work for us? Or we may make a modification that directly changes the master articles. And for you, members of the board, I just kind of put some steps, I think, for your role in this process to help understand as we, you know, have moved in, because the board has really not been participating in the CAPS sessions with us. The first thing that we did is identify the board representatives and the alternates. So check mark, we got that one done. And so for those of you that are the representatives and the alternate, you know, really pay attention, you know, to the updates that will come out in CAPS. And then in the CEA monthly update, when Aaron Hayes comes as the president, that's a real strategic time for him to talk about what we've been working on in CAPS. And so we really want to give him that time so he can communicate directly with you guys as the board. So pay attention to those updates. As we move into the budget subcommittees, those are going to be key. A lot of what we're going to be doing is talk about, okay, what are the needs of the district? What funding is available that we can even begin to negotiate with, because that's a big deal for us. And, so we work as the finance team and with those budget subcommittees. So it's not one person coming alone and saying, okay, here's how much money we have. And, that way it can be a transparent process as we work through in those budget subcommittee meetings. So pay attention to those. Any questions that you have as a board, address those with your board representatives so that they can represent those thoughts and ideas as we go into negotiations. And trust the process. I think part of this training is so that you guys can understand that we've been working at this for a long time. And I think trying to understand that we, as we work through this, we really are trying to come to agreements that, solve problems and, can be agreeable to both sides with the positions that we represent. And so I think for you guys as board, there is some trust in that process of knowing there's a lot of work behind the scenes that's gone on through CAPS and even in the negotiations process to come to the agreements that we're going to bring forth. And you guys ultimately then have the ability to ratify those agreements. And prior to that, there will be executive sessions so that you guys as the board can communicate, with your board liaisons for that. And so, that'll be another opportunity for you to ask questions, or if you feel like something's going a way that you're not so comfortable with, you can express those and we can figure out how to represent those needs as well in the negotiations. And again, finally, I just mentioned that you will have an opportunity to ratify the agreements that we bring at the end of negotiations.
Jeff, you mentioned just the CAPS updates. Are you talking about, do we receive CAPS updates at this point? We don't, or?
Yeah,
because I don't think we.
You will be receiving
But it will be a
those.
starting piece here, or what?
Right, yeah. Scott's working on an update right now of what we've been working on this year. So that should be forthcoming. Probably after spring break, we'll have an update ready to send out, and we'll make sure we include that, that the board gets a copy of that, so.
Great, thanks, that's helpful.
Yep. And with that, I think any of us will stand for any questions you guys have.
I'll just say thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Just a couple things. I think that there's a lot of information in there. And CAPS is one of those that can get really confusing, I think a little bit. And so it's just important, or I wanted to note, it is separate of negotiations and it is not a board committee. That's an administrative group and a group of teachers. There's a lot of overlap. Some people are involved in negotiations and also on that CAPS team. I believe some are not, but it's kind of a way for administration to work with their staff and solve some of these issues that may just get solved at the administrative level, or sometimes they're bringing those recommendations then to negotiations, and we talk about them in negotiations. So it is separate. They kind of play together a little bit. We have, as negotiation teams, sometimes referred things back to CAPS because it just needs kind of more in-depth understanding than we can allot to them through negotiations.
How many people are on your CAPS team?
So generally 5 to 6 from each side of it. So 10 to 12 people. We have 5 voting members from each side. And so we might have 7. So we usually have 5 voting members, 1 alternate, and an observer. So.
And for your CAPS meeting, does your membership give you ideas what to bring to the CAPS meeting?
Yeah, so as far as the CEA, their membership, they're seeking their membership to bring ideas. That would be representative of the teachers and the staff that they represent. And so, Scott, I don't know if you want to speak more directly on that.
Yeah. So, good question. We get a lot of suggestions for what to do with CAPS. And so as a team, we will talk with our membership, tell us what's going on, tell us what are some things that we could maybe work on. And it's important to understand that CAPS and negotiations are not the same thing, right? Sometimes we do the groundwork in CAPS that leads into negotiations, but a lot of times it's just, let's try to solve some issues. And it could be issues that are brought by the staff, and it could be issues that are brought from the district side as well. But we get lots and lots of things and we have to kind of dig into those things. And then we present a list of things that we think are important, the CEA side does, and then the district side presents a list that they think are important, and then we discuss them, and essentially we vote on them, and we hit them in the order that they're voted upon. So, you know, there's 10 of us that are allowed to vote, and we pick which one's most important. And surprisingly enough, sometimes I actually vote for stuff that they bring up. So, anything else on that?
And then you mentioned that not all teachers are part of your membership. How many members do you represent?
I have no idea. You'd have to ask Aaron that. I'm not a building rep or in a president or vice president situation. The state of Idaho does not require membership in the union, so I couldn't even tell you. I know at the school that I teach at, there's a lot, but that doesn't answer your question. So, yeah, so I'm not
curious.
sure. Yeah, I don't know. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Yes, I have one more question. It's actually for Dr. Hucker. Any, as we as a board enter into this season of negotiations, any thoughts or encouragement for us as a board as far as just our role and keeping our eyes on big picture stuff? You've gone through lots of trainings and all that kind of thing. I'd be curious.
Really, the only piece of advice or recommendation at this juncture, and they put it up on their presentation, and that is to just trust the process. There will be one sitting board member involved in this negotiation. There'll be another one in as an alternate. And really what can be a challenge, of course, is to have all that work take place in negotiations and then come back here and spend hours and hours in executive sessions trying to rework all of that. It's just really important, again, to have the trust and confidence in your reps that you've nominated, as well as all of those that are involved. And I think that's what makes IBB a good process, and it just becomes a whole lot less of that stare down each other and create your lines and really create a challenge. I really greatly appreciate what Scott said. The IBB generally takes a little longer. And of course, I think for all teachers, and definitely from the school district's perspective, the sooner that you can wrap up negotiations and ratify, the better. It's just better for everybody. It helps us issue contracts and get things flowing to the teachers, and that's ultimately what they really want to make sure that they have what they need, and especially a contract in place for the next school year. So, we know occasionally, I think last year we didn't ratify until September-ish, if I remember correctly. So it was kind of late. Hopefully moving forward again, we can, again, not try to rush, but try to wrap that up. And I think we can if we'll have that confidence in the process and with our reps, and then we can just ask a few questions in those executive sessions that might need to be asked to just keep it moving along.
Thanks.
And I think in respect to time, I think it takes more time around the issues, but it's because we're having more conversation around it. In the positional, it was kind of, okay, here's our proposal. Yay or nay is kind of how it worked. And so if something didn't fly, it was out the window, right? You moved on to the next item pretty quick, or you called it a day and came back the next time and worked on something different. But we used to spend, meeting after meeting just arguing about units, because units is what drives funding. And, we've gotten beyond all that, I think, and I hope we have. We certainly haven't had that the last 3 or 4 years. And some of that's because of the budget subcommittee, which is made up of staff. Also, we agree on a unit that we're going to use for budgeting purposes, and that's really what we focus negotiations around, that unit count also. So I think that's helped a lot in that regard. And I think Scott said it, that because we are allowing more time for discussion, we're coming up with better solutions probably than we had before, and they're less one-sided than perhaps they were before, because that's what positional bargaining is, right? You're each asking for extremes and knowing you're going to move towards each other. and where does it land, I guess, is kind of who feels better about it in the end. If it's closer to where you started, then you feel better about it. Where interest-based bargaining, you're kind of looking to land in the middle or find something that's win-win for both. Maybe it's solving an issue that we're seeing administratively, but also that staff's seeing. So it's a way better, to me, it's a way better process just for continuity, and it created a lot of animosity before, and we got rid of some of the theatrics that we used to have. It used to be in an auditorium, there'd be a big audience, and we meet in a workspace now, and you have an audience sometimes, and sometimes they're holding signs or whatever, but it's not like it used to be. There used to be a lot of drama to it.
Great. Yes. Thanks. Thank you guys so much. Very, very much. Yeah, 45 minutes. There you go. Thanks for all your work, both, and to the whole team, just getting us to this spot. So, yeah, thanks, Scott and Toby. Terrific. Let's go on to the next item then on our agenda, which is the high school schedule alignment and the thought exchange process. Dr. Hucker.
All right, thanks. Yes, I'll take this one, and you are welcome to stay and listen if you want, or you too can start your Monday night a little earlier too. So thanks for coming. So this is really just a follow-up from a meeting that we had a month or two ago in our regular board meeting, as we're having this continued conversation, and I want to say like a 10-year conversation of whether or not we should align high school schedules or not. And after the last time we brought this to the board at a board meeting, it was discussed that perhaps we've heard now from both sides, both schedule defenders, if you will, of what they like and they don't like, and with having 3 new board members and multiple new administrators at central office, the conversation was really, at some juncture, we've got to either make this happen or put it to bed and say we're not going to have these conversations for the next 5-10 years, whatever. And I think we all agreed to that maybe we could have asked some questions a little bit differently. We could have done some things differently. And so an idea was to utilize our new thought exchange system that we have just brought on board to try to create some good, for lack of better words, I guess, good thoughts from our community and all of those that might take the time to put this together. So Scott Mabin has been very involved in working with Thought Exchange and seeking their guidance on what kind of questions could we put into a Thought Exchange that truly generate thought. We're not looking at votes, yes, no. We have honestly probably surveyed our community to death over this conversation, and we know about where it sits. The questions that are now coming your way have to do with, hey, wait a minute, we've been really holding off on this schedule alignment conversation, but what about all the work that we've done on start times? You heard that from one of your other board meetings as well. Those questions continue to come today, and I think again that's where we're at with our community. We diligently are wanting our community's input, and then we are. I won't say diligently, but we are not sharing out the end results of those decisions quick enough. We keep them going, and we just need to make some decisions. We've been asking on both of those conversations. We know where we're at with both those topics, for instance, and it's time, I think, in the next few months that we decide whether we're moving forward or not. So this one has to do with the schedule alignment, and we know the schedule alignment also makes good sense. If we are going to make a change, that might be the time to also make a change with start times if we were going to do that. So it makes sense that we were kind of holding off on the start time conversations until the alignment schedule was done. So what we've done is put together this thought exchange idea, and we'd like to kind of run it out there in our community. It's completely anonymous, completely voluntary. So the algorithms and the behind the scenes works of Thought Exchange will allow us to see what kind of potential common ground we can come from the various questions and the thought. And our idea would be to present this back to you in a brief presentation, probably at your April workshop. And then you would know whether or not you want to kind of move forward. And then at the May board meeting, we could choose to do something official by action if the board were to want to do something. So before you in your board packet, you can see kind of the recommended initial thought. So the way a thought exchange works, just to help you get a quick picture of this, you log onto a website, a QR link, and you simply are asked to give us a thought. We ask a general question such as something along the lines like, what are some important things for us to consider in deciding if both schools should be on the same schedule, and how to select a schedule that's best for all students? That's a pretty broad question, right? So what it allows you to do is actually answer those questions. In your own words, you just create a short little answer to that question. And then you have the opportunity to rate the various other questions that other people have, or various other statements that other people have placed into this exchange. And then what we'll get from that is we can walk away and say, holy cow, so we had 1,000 people rate various different thoughts, and these few thoughts were really kind of at the top of the list here, and we think there's some things we can take away. We might hear from our community that, hey, they're done with this. We don't need to be having this conversation anymore. Everybody likes what they currently have. Could be an answer, right? We might learn too, like I think we will from our initial surveys, that perhaps there's some better ways to create schedules that create opportunities for kids, but yet also, maybe Coeur d'Alene, for instance, Coeur d'Alene High, we heard from teachers that they really value the everyday contact with kids. So I think it'll be an opportunity for us to just hear that and see what kind of common ground we might be able to come to through that exchange, and then be able to make a decision whether there's enough here behind this information to say we want to move forward and consider it. We've already made the commitment that if we were to do a schedule alignment, we couldn't do it soon enough for next year. It would have to be the following school year anyway. So I think that would help, and that will also help our community too, because whether we do move forward with a schedule alignment or we don't, the part B of that whole conversation is your start times that you already have had a whole lot of community input on over the last many years too, but maybe many trustees, since 3 are new, just don't know the history behind all of that too. But again, we've been very careful. That data exists, it's all there. We'll bring it back whenever we should and need to. I think the first question is, do we align the schedules and create some additional opportunities for kids if that's a valuable choice, or perhaps not. So this is kind of our proposed sample thought exchange. There are some embedded questions within thought exchange for us to help decipher out the data. I do think it's important to know, because this is an open thought exchange that is unanimous, I don't know if I care a whole lot about what people think, that might live in Texas. So I think asking if they're associated with the school district is and which high school perhaps is, I think that's just a good demographic piece to help us do that. But we know how that works too, right? I mean, I could live in Texas and lie when I complete the thought exchange too. So we know how that could ultimately come out. But we've put together, Scott's worked with thought exchange to create some embedded, more like yes and no questions too, which can help guide some of our overall thoughts when everything comes together and we can analyze that. And so our proposal is we would run this out, get it out here in the next few days, perhaps by Friday at least, before spring break kind of starts. Let people have some time to put in some thoughts. The kind of the kicker with thought exchange is that if you're the very first person to go in and put a thought in there, you can rate your own thought, but you want to rate other thoughts, right? So you do need to allow some time for those thoughts to generate so that you can go back in there and then rank those thoughts and give some stars next to thoughts that you think, hey, this has got some merit. I like what that was said here, and so I'm going to give it a 5, or no, I don't even have a clue what this person's talking about. I give this a 1, and there's your 5 scale range on those thoughts, and then those all get scored and ranked too. We're going to start using Thought Exchange a whole lot more. We're going to use it internally within our district, within our admin teams, hopefully within our schools. In fact, I'm working with Mr. Mabin right now, and I think a great thought for us. We know how the last couple years have been, especially on our staff, and I feel like they're very tired. It's just been a tough couple of years. I would love to just ask our staff what would they like us to know. That's a pretty broad, open question, but I think it could be, again, a way for all of our staff to share out, hey, I'd like you just to know this. I think this policy is a little wonky and would like you to look at it, or I think this or that or whatever. It's a great avenue for people to create some thoughts, and then again, rank those thoughts, and we can walk away with some maybe some great ideas. I don't know. I've seen other districts do things similar, and it's just a great way, again, to continue to push on collaboration, continue to help all of our employees in this case have a voice, and with this specific Thought Exchange, hopefully the students and staff and community of Coeur d'Alene, hopefully we'll get some good feedback here to help us know whether or not, hey, they do value, and these are the things they say we really should look at if we are going to align schedules, or maybe they're past that, and that's kind of what we've wanted to know all along anyway. So I'll stop there with my Thought Exchange spiel and turn it over to questions.
My first question is, how long would we keep this available?
That's a great question, and I know Scott's in there helping Seth run the video portion of this, so I know it's hard on Seth if Scott's not in there, but here's Scott poking his head out. Scott, do you want to kind of give us an idea? A couple weeks, I think we're kind of thinking of running this exchange. Thanks, Seth, for covering for Scott too.
Thank you. Yes, my thinking, and I did discuss this with our representative from Thought Exchange last week. They often recommend 2 to 3 week public engagement. I think we would try to go a little closer to the 3 week window because of spring break.
Yeah.
And people maybe not being completely engaged. I think we could possibly push this out as early as tomorrow if this looks good to you this evening, and keep it active until maybe April 10th. That would be about 19 days. And then it would be important for us to once or twice re-engage with people to remind them that they need to revisit it, as Dr. Hawker was just explaining, so they can see what has happened since they initially visited, and they have an opportunity to rate other thoughts that are coming in.
So that would give people a little bit, the rest of this week, pre-spring break, because I do think the disadvantage of doing over spring break is some percentage is not focusing on this sort of thing. Because they're on vacation. Yeah. I'm going on vacation too.
They're thinking about the beach.
Yeah. So that would give us a full week again after spring break, the April 10th.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, that's a Sunday, I believe, and it's just because that's about a week before your April workshop, and we would need a little time again to circle back with with the representative from Thought Exchange, since this would be the first major one that we do. They're going to help us analyze it, walk through, understand the presentation, and we just feel like we might need that time to get our report ready to bring back to you that following week.
Okay. Yeah. I think if we do a full week after spring break, that gives time to be back in normal mode for people who were out of it. So, yeah.
So Scott, you gave us some questions just to consider. There would be other open-ended question spots, or spots to provide comments, or just, because sometimes when you're looking at these very important, the first ones are kind of, you got to pick one.
The very first general question is very open-ended, and it's going to create it could create hundreds of statements from other people, and then those all get ranked by you when you're in the system. You get to see what those other thoughts are, and you get to rank those, and that helps provide you're kind of voting on what you think makes sense in there. And again, one of the biggest pluses to this thought exchange is we always know, I mean, heck, it's really hard to get two people to agree on anything today, but this creates those overlaps where you've got your two circles, but maybe there's a little overlap. We can actually identify within this system, that algorithm tells us, well, even though there's extremes and maybe somebody says, yes, you should realign, and somebody says, no, you shouldn't, there's common denominator in here. Perhaps it's funding. Maybe if money is an issue, they don't want it. Maybe if money is not an issue, they don't want it. We'll see those common areas, and that's how I think will help us to make a decision. That's my hope.
Scott, how are we going to get this out to the community? Are you going to email every family? Are you going to put it on our app? What are you going to do?
Right. Yeah, I wish I had an email address for every family in our community. But I'm thinking, of course, parents, guardians, students, the business community, also service organizations. We have quite a few contacts that we've made over the years with various groups, organizations, nonprofits, the chamber, network. So I think that some of it is going to involve direct contact with those organizations to encourage them to share the link or QR code to the thought exchange. But I also think since really this is open to everyone, we just need to use all of our communications channels to get it out there. So websites and social media, perhaps reach out to the Coeur d'Alene Press and encourage them to do a little article about what we're doing here, especially since it's the first one. And then hopefully from there, it's just word of mouth and it takes off.
Since we're reaching out to a lot of other people who don't have children in the district, is this weighted? Are these questions weighted? Do parents have more say-so than, say, someone who doesn't really have anything to do with our school district?
I'm not aware of a mechanism within Thought Exchange that places weight on it.
Okay.
But again, by asking some of the, I guess, demographic or affiliation questions, that allows us, yes, to filter and sort the results.
Okay.
And this is a little bit of a time commitment. So I'm not sure I would expect that we would see a lot of folks who have no affiliation and no interest choose to take the time to be involved in this. So.
All right, thanks.
So that's one of my other questions is, how much time are people going to have to, like, if someone comes for 5 minutes, will that be a useful response, or is it going to take more time than that to, yeah?
Well, it depends on how many thoughts you want to visit. You have that option. So, if there's 1,000 different thoughts, it might take you 1,000 minutes to go through each of those thoughts if you wanted to rank each one of those. Oftentimes, people won't spend that much time. And as those thoughts come back from Thought Exchange, I believe they come back kind of in an order, if you will. Those thoughts that have generated previous thoughts before, they'll pop up for you now that you've put in your 2 cents and your comment. Then it asks you, well, what do you think of this thought? Rank it from 1 to 5, and you can just go as deep into that as you choose.
Okay.
Mom, I've never heard of this before, so it sounds really interesting, but it also, I think I'm concerned that we might get this huge amount of information that's not really targeted to the specific thing that we really need the information on.
You may be right. This is our first one here in the district too.
Yeah, we don't want to get so much that it.
I would say this. My thought is that we have surveyed this to death already. So we've already. I mean, the committee has made recommendations. We know where majority and minority opinions are on this. We've already presented it. But what we still are after, we keep hearing the voices, and we're unsure, should we do this, should we not, it's a big deal. I'm hoping that this thought exchange process just gives us another voice that we have not tapped into before, and we might come away with something more. If we don't, then we already we'll just be reconfirming what we've already known from especially this last round of work, which I think very closely emulates years of previous committee work. So it's been a long conversation for a long time, and I guess for me, I'm ready to either get her done or not, because I think that's what is it's adding to our community feeling like their voices aren't being heard because we're just still undecided ourselves. And it's a big, tough decision. I mean, you five here around this table know more about this than most anybody in the community, and you know how tough of a decision it is. The community, they haven't spent near the time you have, and yet they're all eager to either, are we doing this or are we not doing this perspective. So I think this will be good help for us to reevaluate. Scott and I might be shocked to learn that something was revealed that we hadn't even thought of. We may come back and just reiterate exactly what we already knew, or somewhere in between, right? I think it's certainly worth it. And again, we are committing to engaging our community on various topics. I think this is a good, timely one, but moving forward, we want to use this thought exchange in various ways throughout the year to help get ideas from folks.
I also feel one of the features of using thought exchange that is appealing is to some extent it's like crowdsourcing, and you're relying on your community to identify ideas that truly resonate with people, and those are the ones that will rise to the top, and you'll see high ratings and a lot of support around those ideas. So in the end, even though we could end up with hundreds and hundreds or more different thoughts, it's really the ones that generate a lot of support and resonance with all the participants that will rise to the top for you to consider.
You said bringing this back at the April workshop, and then for some sort of action, I think you said at the May board meeting, and that action would be, okay, the community doesn't support this, we're done talking about this and we're doing nothing, or, okay, there is support for this, let's continue to explore it. Are those then the two options? Or is May, I just want to make sure what I'm prepared for this. We're not talking about at May, we're picking a schedule.
No. In fact, again, although that's I think that's a big decision that the board's going to have to do. I also think there's more questions there. You all have batted around the conversations of graduation requirements and all kinds of things. I think this is kind of a package conversation here. There's a lot riding on this schedule alignment or not, and then start of school times and or even graduation requirements, right? So I think the biggest hurdle that you could get over is to say, okay, it's apparent based upon the previous data we've received, as well as maybe new stuff coming in from Thought Exchange, that it is a goal of ours to align schedules. Let's say we learn that. That can put a lot of things to bed once that is stated from this board that schedules will align. Then we go to work. The next question is, okay, so if schedules need to align, then we can visit start times. We can also visit graduation requirements, because that can also have that can help drive the schedule, and we haven't approached it from really that avenue. So there are schools that we have that value the everyday contact, and there's community that values the options of electives and choice and various different opportunities for kids to explore things. And so is there a good way to blend the two, to create a schedule where we can accomplish both? There could be. And so we could go to work and bring that back to the board at a reasonable time, not rushing, recognizing that decision, we're not changing anything this next school year anyway. We wouldn't have the time. And so that just keeps that door open. Or, as Casey pointed out, or we say, yeah, we just still are not there, and it's just not worth the work. There's lots of other things we need to be focused on, and so we're not going to align schedules. So now that could be decided perhaps as early as your May board meeting, and then you can get to work on saying, well, okay, now that we've put that to bed, do we want to discuss potentially start time changes? Do we want to talk about graduation requirements? Any of those things could could come, following that. Obviously, start times, again, that's a tough one because the work's already been done, and we know I think it was my understanding. I've not really reviewed any of that because we're not there yet, but it seemed to me like it's a pretty, again, split decision on that conversation. Maybe a little leaning towards flopping the two schedules, but knowing that there's a lot that goes into that decision as well. So I think all of those things are things we've got to evaluate, and it would be tough. It's going to take, transportation. There's a lot into changing start times. It's not as easy as just flopping elementary and high school schedules today. There's details that we've got to work through. It's very likely that we're a year away from being able to make that move, even if the board voted in May or June. But I think our community is just eager to know, where does that sit? I keep hearing that as I travel the community. That's the next question now. So it's still alive and out there.
One concern as far as the thought exchange is concerned, or as far as it's concerned, is there anything stopping someone from going back and rating their own question, say 50 or 100 times, to give it the weight that they're hoping it's going to get?
I think
being anonymous,
I think you'd have to go to 50 different devices to do that, because they do track the whatever it's called. Seth would know in there, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But each computer has an IP address.
Okay, thank you, Seth.
And so yes, thanks, Seth. And so yes, you would have to be very creative and go to multiple different devices to try to get in multiple different, ratings. So
that's good. I've taken surveys that go both ways. You can take it 20 times from the same device. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, the good news is we should generate, I'm hoping we generate, dozens or maybe even hundreds of thoughts, and then those get scored. And out of that, we may learn what's valuable, what people think we should consider if we are making this decision, what we shouldn't consider if we're making this decision. I think I really do hope that it will help us. Now, I know your April workshop sessions are already jam-packed. I think we have like 4 things already on that agenda. So, this would be, again, I just can't bring it to you as early as the April board meeting and give it enough time to really exchange. So in fairness, we may literally need to wait and do it in a workshop at the next month or something. But I think we'll know too if we get a whole bunch of results, and we just need to take a little more time and not try to squeeze it in. But like today, we may end this meeting 45 minutes early. So, maybe your next workshop, we've got some ample time to have that conversation as well.
Thanks for the work in trying something new and reaching out to our community this way. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens and to see how else we can use it in the future. So thanks for your work on that.
Well, thank you very much. And so just to make sure we're good, the questions and everything that you see here, we're okay to maybe run those out tomorrow as quick as we could. If Scott's ready to go as quick as tomorrow, that would even give us another half a week of results before spring break. That'd be great.
Are we going to be able to see this? Like, will it come to us?
The invite?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
You'll get to take the exchange.
Okay,
You betcha.
Good.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. I think that's it. All right. Meeting adjourned.